Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse, where we discuss the latest DevOps news and AWS announcements, all sourced from our sweetops community, plus live Q&A you can't find anywhere else. It is August 13th, 2025. I'm your host, Eric Ostrom. Real quick, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse sells AWS reference architectures that get you production ready in just 2 weeks. So if you're curious to learn more, just head over to cloudposse.com and check it out. So how can you maximize today's session? First off, our format's very informal. You can engage as much as you'd like, ask questions, and if you're curious about any of our open source tools like Atmos, this is a great place to ask. For those on the recording, we host these calls live, so don't miss out. You can register for these live sessions at cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, cloudposse.com/officehours. I do have one ask. If you find any portion of today's session valuable, share it with your team. Just head over to youtube.com/cloudposse where you're going to find this recording posted in just a few hours. So let's get started and discuss the news. All right, first one, this was trending just today actually on Hacker News. Nginx has finally added native support for the ACME protocol. If you're not familiar with ACME, that's the protocol that Let's Encrypt implements so that you get the kind of just-in-time TLS certificates that are short-lived without having to pay up the wazoo for certificates. There's been other ways to accomplish this with Nginx. Now this is just supported in the core. So that'll make a lot of things easier. Next announcement is if you are unfortunately still running on an Intel Mac, maybe for your home lab, because if you're still on Intel on a Mac, that's a pretty old laptop. Just a heads up that support for that is dropping in 27, Mac OS 27. Another minor announcement was something that I was excited about. To date, in order to build ARM64 binaries, for example, or test things on ARM64, you had to do something pretty hacky on GitHub Actions, unless you paid up for it. Alternatively, you could always run self-hosted runners to support ARM64. Now you can get that out of the box on public repositories. So this is good because if you're developing open source that should run on ARM, now you can do that on public runners. Any thoughts on this one? All right. I know for Atmos, our project, we ended up using self-hosted runners to test things on Mac. Let's see. Kubesphere. Unfortunately, there was another rug pull in the open source ecosystem. Kubesphere was a relatively popular project that presents you like with a dashboard on Kubernetes, make it easier to manage, presents some slight guardrails and so forth. They have changed their license now, and it's commercial. They've also pulled the binaries, and there was very poor communication about how this happened. So unfortunately, it just puts more of a bad taste in people's mind as they trust open source. We are seeing this kind of move more often. I believe we just discussed what was happening with, oh gosh, how can I forget? The Helm chart repository organization that VMware bought and bundled now as part of Tanzu. They stopped publishing the releases for Docker images related to those Helm charts. Teleport stopped distributing binaries for their community edition of software. So this kind of move of kind of removing the binaries is more and more common. But this is more than just that. This is, of course, a license change as well. I think a lot of this is because it is pretty difficult to build businesses around pure open source unless there's some other angle to monetize the open source. beyond the product itself. So for example, Cloud Posse, we have an open source ecosystem, but where we capitalize is on selling a reference architecture on top of our open source, and that's how we commercialize it. So if you want to support open source, check out our reference architecture. Go to cloudposse.com. All right, next. All right, what else? Amazon, there's been a lot of these nightmare scenarios where people accidentally destroy their resources, like on GKE deleting a project or something by accident, or what was it? A GKE project that expired, and that got a lot of bad press for Google. Here's another one, making it harder to accidentally destroy your EKS clusters by making it a two-phase operation. First phase is you have to first disable the termination prevention, and then you can subsequently terminate it. Let's see. One announcement that I missed, this came out in the beginning of July. I didn't see it, but this is a really nice one, I think. So Dependabot added support for minimum package age. And as you all know, there's been some pretty bad supply chain attacks over the past few years at this point. And one of the problems is if you are living on the bleeding edge, especially for popular NPM packages, maybe it might not be a bad idea to delay updating until that package has matured for some amount of time. It's not a fail-safe, but it's another layer of defense where, if you wait 1 month, let's say, for a release to kind of settle in, that can spare you some of the risks of supply chain injections, because they're typically caught relatively quickly. Any thoughts on this one? Oh man, I'm tearing through my announcements, guys. All right, and last one, something I'm very excited about. We coincidentally did a poll in the Atmos channel a week or two ago about what types of native components would you'd like to see supported in Atmos. Coincidentally, we were already working on one that was Packer, and that was also one of the most upvoted ones. So that was a nice coincidence. So yes, we have added support for Packer managed natively by Atmos and Atmos stack configurations. Why this is nice is if you are, for example, for compliance reasons, managing your own AMI images, for example, for EC2 instances, for EKS EC2 instances or similar scenarios like that. Packer is a great tool for that. If you need to manage lots of different base images or golden images, now you can use Atmos and the whole Atmos framework to do that in a consistent manner. Since it's all in the stack configuration, the other kind of cool thing is you can use the YAML functions that we support in Atmos and pull information that comes from other components in other stacks that you have, if that's important information for you to have inside of your golden AMI. For example, maybe you need some endpoint URL or IP, or whitelisting some IP addresses or things like that. You could do that now. Yeah, any questions on the Packer support in Atmos? This is, I believe, in 1.186 we released this. Cool. Then since I'm all out of announcements, Ben, did you pull up did you push up your PR yet? Is that something we could, yeah, here it is.
Yeah.
So something really cool I'd like to introduce. This is not ready yet. It's something we're working on, but it's just another reason for you to get excited about Atmos if you're not using it today, or if you are using it today, something that you should consider using as soon as it's released. So one of the big challenges of building out a cloud architecture is just the number of moving pieces and the number of different tools that you have to do just to get productive. For example, on AWS, logging in to AWS and distributing the profiles. How are you going to distribute the profiles to all your developers? How are you going to standardize this, whether you're using SAML or Amazon single sign-on? There are a lot of point solutions, right? There's AWS to SAML. There's formerly Leap, which was a product that was discontinued. They couldn't find market viability as a standalone product. There's the individual solutions for like how do you switch roles. There's the browser plugin, switch roles extended or whatever that you can use to switch your roles there. And the list goes on and on. Well, this is such a universal problem, and we've been so tired of having to constantly re-implement a solution for our reference architecture that we are just building it into Atmos itself. So it's something that everyone who uses any modern cloud will need is some way to log in to their SSO provider, assume roles, and so forth. So we are implementing Atmos Auth natively. This is something Ben is working on. We will do a demo, of course, once this is released. But with Atmos Auth, I don't know if we have the docs written for this yet, or maybe.
Not yet. It's still heavily in progress. Lots to change.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, is there stack config that would?
Testing with our infrastructure.
Okay, so you're testing on our own infrastructure. So we don't have a stack config we can show you here yet. But let me just do a little bit more hand waving. What this is going to do is help you configure your providers, so your identity providers, then separately configure your identities so that you can assume different roles. And then Atmos can do this automatically for you when you run Terraform. So it'll automatically log into the right AWS identity or via the AWS provider, for example, and assume the right identity and then run Terraform. And then that'll work with custom commands and components and workflows and just a really nice solution completing the whole Atmos framework for infrastructure. All right. Any questions about that upcoming feature? All right. Then, all right. Let's see, check the chat here. Oh yeah, the service I was thinking about earlier was Bitnami. Thanks, Michael, for reminding me on that. So yeah, Bitnami are the ones that stopped publishing Docker images for the Helm charts as a way to monetize their commercial offering. Wow. Yeah, Jeremy White was mentioning how they were just talking to somebody using Databricks, which apparently auto deletes after 30 days. Given what Databricks does, that sounds pretty scary. All right. Then we also have one other feature coming to Atmos, which is really cool, which is the toolchain capability. So it's called Atmos Toolchain. And the Atmos toolchain will allow you to manage basically any package that's available through the Aqua registry. So typically GitHub releases or any binary release that's available at an endpoint URL. So not a full-fledged package manager, not something that's gonna, yum install some RPM and install things natively into your operating system. Very different use case. Atmos Toolchain is like a standardized version manager for the most common tools that we're going to use as part of the toolchain. For example, installing Helm, Terraform, OpenTofu, Packer, or other binaries, provided they're available as a public GitHub release and easily downloadable. This is really nice because the idea with Atmos is that you can just start Atmos up and it's automatically going to help you log in to the configured IDP as it's in your GitHub repository, automatically install the tools that you need based on your OS and architecture. So imagine a new team member joins your team. All they need to do is clone your repo, and run some commands, and Atmos is up and running, installing all the tools that you need to run any given component. You can run any version of OpenTofu, any version of Terraform that you need based on component, automatically installed. And then, assuming identities as needed to perform the operations you want, all within a single framework called Atmos that's open source. And I think I haven't seen anything else out there like it. Yeah, so Michael, you were asking, Atmos Auth will support AWS SSO, and in terms of supporting Auth with Okta, I think it will support Okta, but I don't believe we will be using any native integration with an Okta CLI, for example, at least in the current implementation. We're doing it kind of and taking an SDK route with AWS SSO. We would totally be interested in implementing better first-class support for Okta, but I'd want to see it done in an SDK approach versus shelling out to the CLI.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We want native libraries, so like AWS to SAML is what we're using for SAML, and that's nice because it's written in Go, and it still has some hiccups. But anything with a Go library that we can tightly integrate makes sense. I think a shell makes it a little bit more complex.
I bet the Okta CLI is in Go, though. I'd be really surprised if they chose another language. Yep, it's in Go.
Oh,
So that means there's first-class support in Go for the Okta SDK, and and it looks like nothing is internal. So it means we can probably call directly a lot of the functionality inside the Okta CLI. Okay, and Michael's clarifying he didn't mean literally the CLI. He did mean just as a way
yeah.
of the Okta SDK, if you will, to establish the sessions. So yeah, I think that would be really awesome to support that headless session management natively just through Atmos again. So it works. And Okta is obviously one of the most common IDPs, so I think that would make sense. Yeah, so Brian, that's a great question on Atmos versus Geodesic. So Brian asks, where would you use Atmos versus Geodesic? Are they intended to be used together, or are they for different use cases? Let me tell you a little story. So, Geodesic is probably the first open source project by Cloud Posse. I think I opened up the first commit. This is going back to like 2015 or 2016 or something like that. It's been around for a while. It's been a great vehicle for us to distribute a reusable tool chain that can work on any laptop because it's basically a toolbox container. Before the concept of dev containers existed, there was Atmos. I think Atmos is nice, and we've
Yeah.
done a lot to work around the rough edges, integrating Atmos natively with an OS, if you will. But there's still problems like it can't launch a web browser, it can't use your OS keychain. And the big thing we were trying to solve with Geodesic was making it possible to have this plethora of tools run consistently, whether you're on Windows, Mac, Linux, etc. And Geodesic did that. I think that, fast forward 10 years later, we can look for some better alternatives. And while we are not, abandoning Geodesic and it's still core to our solution and we'll still use it and document it and so forth, why do we still need it when we can automate it, test it, validate it in Atmos? So the goal is, can we take what has proven to be the most effective things that we've done in Geodesic, and can we just move that into the Atmos core? So you have a single binary that you install and can run and manage your infrastructure, and you don't need yet another level of abstraction. When we started Cloud Posse, when we started Geodesic, it was all about piecing together a patchwork of hundreds of tools, if you will. Like if you go to github.com, Cloud Posse packages, we were literally building our own distribution of tools through here so that we can install them easily on Geodesic and so forth. But I think we can accomplish the same thing now natively in Atmos. So that's why I'm looking to do it this way. So yeah, Michael, I was just reading comments. So yeah, Michael gives a use case, so they use Geodesic as a cloud ops shell. They run Atmos within Geodesic. Geodesic solves, it runs on my system exactly, and it keeps all the operations, CICD running in the same predictable results every time. That way, none of the team gets different results because they do not run Atmos against the infrastructure on their local host. But of course, we sometimes also use Atmos on localhost, and then they then they punish that team member. So my goal is that I think that's still a strong use case for Geodesic. When we originally envisioned Geodesic, the idea was to build a container as an artifact the same way you do for your applications. Do that for infrastructure, do that for your IAC, and run with it. I think that there's always been a little bit of a gap. That's, for example, one of the reasons why we mount your local file system into the container, and that made it a lot less painful. I think that there's stuff that we can do to still reduce that as a hard requirement that you're in something like Geodesic to get a consistent execution. And with what I've just described in Atmos, it is OS and architecture aware, so it's installing the tooling at different versions. One of the other problems, one of the limitations, for example, and this is still beneficial if you're using Geodesic with Atmos and what I've said here in the toolchain, is version management. For example, running multiple concurrent versions of software for Helm, for kubectl, for OpenTofu, etc., that is possible with this solution so that you don't have to upgrade the entire container and the version that you're running for a particular package. You can systematically just use a newer version of OpenTofu, for example, for a subset of your components in one of your stacks, like your dev stack, and that's what this enables. One of the other problems, now I don't think you would have this problem, Michael, as you describe it, because you enforce consistency, everything is using that same container. One of the other problems we've seen is people running with the GitHub Actions, people running Atmos locally on their machine, and then people running Atmos inside of Geodesic. Trying to get all of those versions in sync was confusing because there were a lot of places to update. So one of the ideas in the toolchain implementation we're looking at is in making it easy that your atmos.yaml configuration enforces a particular version of Atmos that you should be running. Further making it harder that the wrong version of Atmos is used against your infrastructure. All right. So that's all the announcements I got. Any other announcements or questions that we can get to today?
Yeah, I did have one item to share this time around. Been on the road the past couple meetings, so it's good hanging out with you guys again. But
Yeah, good to have you back.
yeah, thanks. Um, I can't remember how long ago, maybe it was last week or the week before. GitHub announced the I don't know if this had already been in place and they just announced it or if it was just now GA, but you can use GitHub Models in your GitHub Actions workflows now.
Yeah.
And it's pretty sick. I mean, really the capabilities that this gives you. Number one, because GitHub Actions can be triggered off of just about anything, right? And so some of the examples that they give in this particular article, uh, things like processing issues and PRs, just kind of like some of the grunt work that somebody might have to do on a project or something. And I've been on projects where they have, the whole template where before you submit an issue, before you submit a PR, you have to go through this checklist to check everything, whatever.
Yeah,
And perhaps that's still warranted. But now instead of having a human go and have to validate all of these,
that
you
check.
know,
Have you
these
seen it?
submitted
Have you
things.
seen somebody implement an action that does that using the GitHub models?
No, I have not. That's why I'm just sharing it. I just read it. I guess it came out on the 4th, announced on the 4th, or updated on the 8th. I forget when I saw it, but
Yeah,
yeah, I'm really eager to try this out. My main concerns with this being in a workflow are the fact that you're going to need a really good prompt, whatever you're processing. And I could see it, if you're on a very specific project with very specific needs for processing issues, PRs, or whatever you choose to automate, but you're going to have to distill that need into a very specific prompt that the model could work with. Maybe you have
yeah.
to try out a couple, specific models to get it to work. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's going to go a long way for automating the tedium that comes with managing or processing PRs, issues, that type of stuff on very active projects.
So the first I learned about it was here on Office Hours, actually, and it was Rishav who's actually here today as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so Rishav showed us a GitHub action that he was using for this. I forget exactly how he was using it, and he can probably share. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. He also shared what some of the limitations were. And I think, well, I guess one of the big ones would just be, yeah. So you know how Rishav was using it? I thought it was really cool. So at the end of a GitHub action workflow, he had if always, so the step always runs. And then it can take any error messages that happened uh, through that workflow execution and pass that to the GitHub action step that uses the model to then give the developer a plausible explanation of why that error happened.
Yeah, no, that's very awesome. And it totally makes sense because you got the context of the code, and you have the insight of the error messages. And I think that's definitely a plus on like Amazon Q. I don't know if anybody has ever used CloudFormation with Amazon Q, where if you encounter an error in your CloudFormation template, it'll say, "Oh, do you want to help you find the error?" And you say yes, or click the button or whatever it does. And then it's like, oh, the error happened here, and it's like, well,
Mm.
great, I know where it happened. Give me some more insight into what actually happened there. Like, I can find the error message. I need to know what to fix. So yeah, that would be awesome to use it like that in a workflow, and pretty much any workflow. Just tag that on to the bottom, yeah, like you demonstrated, and yeah, I could totally see that.
And I could totally see your idea, which I thought would be pretty cool, which would be yeah, verifying the checklist in your issue template or your PR template has have all the steps been performed and automatically checking those off. That would be cool. Rashav shared his link here, I think.
I was just gonna say, yeah, for a couple of things, you hit the nail on the head. Is it's usually I use it as a debug step. So if in the case of a step failing, you can pass in a whole bunch of error messages. But I don't want to. I want to be more upfront. As of now, there is now an official first-party action by GitHub for GitHub.
Oh, okay.
And I want to promote that instead because the drawback of the action that I put together is the context is dependent on what you put into it. So you
Hmm.
would put in the error message and so on and so forth, which means you would have to painstakingly concatenate all your file content and then pass it in. And that's a huge context. You don't know what files
Yeah,
are relevant. And this
yeah.
is where I think the official first party does a better job because if you scroll down a wee bit further, they have MCP support nowadays.
Oh, no way.
So now, not only do you not have to pass in context, you could give it something as vague as, I don't know, find all the issues which relate to a certain pull request and then add that as a commit or something like that. And it will do that grunt work even better than it would have done before.
Very cool.
Yeah, I didn't know about that other action, but yeah, the one that I was mentioning and they mentioned in the article is yeah, they're straight up integrated into GitHub Actions with this supported action that does all the things. And that's really what kind of blew my mind.
Yeah. Did you have that link to that announcement as well, or did you already post it above
Yeah,
here?
it's the very first link in the chat. Well, first link for me, but it's in the higher up in the chat. But I could post it again.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I didn't scroll up that high. Got it. All right. Automate your actions. Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I think at least for the time being, during this introductory stage, this is free.
Yeah, I didn't see anything that indicated cost or
Mhm.
some sort of I'm sure they have limits, if nothing else, you have your workflow limits, but I don't
Exactly.
know what the limits are on model usage from like from your account level or workspace level or whatever it takes.
This is pretty cool. Yeah.
And especially these kind of things, like the system prompt, that's pretty great, but you can imagine it can clog up YAML workflow files quite a bit. So one of
Mhm.
the other inputs they have is pass in a YAML input file path. So you could have a big old pages upon pages of instructions, style guide, guidelines, and you can just pass a path into your workflow, and it's all in code, gets updated as and when you want. Super nifty stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm talking about as far as like well-written, dialed-in prompts that are actually part of the project. You know what I'm saying? So then you got your devs, you got your ops, and then you got your AI ops folks that are like writing the prompts that actually drive the
Your prompt engineer.
development and
Get it
yeah,
right.
and the release of the software itself. So yeah, it's crazy world we're coming into these days.
The MCP support, especially, that blows my mind because now you're really, really trusting the thing to do right by you.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
One
I
of the
think.
things that we found, like, since it's often interesting to find what's actually a useful use case for it, because oftentimes what one of some of our devs have brought up is, hey, the reason we have workflows is because they're consistent. We want them to do the same thing every time. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
using AI, you got to have some really good use case for it. Like, what is it really bringing to the table that we couldn't do otherwise, just using our brains without having models involved? And one of those is, oftentimes you've probably seen commit messages, and when you're merging in PR left and right, they don't have great titles. They don't always describe what you do.
Yeah.
And at the end of the month, when you cut a new release, you had do the auto-generate release notes, and they're not great in terms of why the changes you've introduced.
Yeah.
They tell you all about what you've changed, but there is little
Yeah.
about the intent. And that's one of the things we've added a workflow for is whenever a new release is cut, it goes through the release notes, and because it's good at natural language processing, underneath each of the bullet points, it adds a sub point, like a description on this is why it was introduced, this is why it's useful, this is the reason why this work happened. And the idea is if you're a non-technical stakeholder, that's a little bit more meaningful to you compared to just here is a whole bunch of commit messages, figure it out.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've been really strict about that at Cloud Posse in our open source ecosystem, always ensuring there's a what and a why. Also, I think it's so important, even for developers, to understand
Mm-hmm.
why you're doing things. It's not because Eric told me so, or my boss said so, right? And I've literally seen that as the why, but
Mm-hmm.
then I lose my cool. All right, that's cool. All right, any other goodness, Michael, to share?
No, that's it for me for now.
All right, pretty cool. Let me see the chat here. Yeah, like Michael says, you probably don't want it to auto remediate certain kinds of issues, like database having an error, just destroy it, problem solved. Which is a frustrating thing. I can't, the number of times programming and cursor says, hey, this is having a problem. Let me just delete it. Look, there, I fixed it. Perfect. Tests are passing again. It's infuriating. All right. Any other news announcements, questions we can get answered today? That's my son popping his head in.
Would you mind going back to the slides? I missed the first part of the meeting. It'd be good to see what are the headlines we went over already.
All right. Yeah. Let me pull that up quickly here. Yes, we discussed the ACME support natively now in Nginx. Intel Max OS or Mac OS 27 is dropping support for Intel. ARM64 runners are now available for public repositories, which is nice.
Oh, nice.
Kubesphere changes their license and stops distributing binaries. Deletion
And
protection for EKS. Yeah.
there's your classic 24-hour sign-outs.
Yeah. It's more like 7-day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, oh, wow, that's a nice one from Michael. Apparently Slack now shows up as an IBM company. Oh, sorry, Hashi Corp even. No, I was just going to say, in a couple of weeks' time, there's the IaCConf thing that's coming up. I just popped a link in the
Well, it
chat.
seems like is it a monthly conference?
I don't know. Is it? I thought it was once a year.
So because I think it was just happened because I think Matt Gowie presented at IaCConf and somebody shared the link for that.
You're right, yeah. So I'm looking at past history. So May was the last one. August 27 is the one that's coming up, and they have one in November. So it's a little bit sporadic, but every other month perhaps.
Yeah.
Very
So
much.
that makes sense. It's yeah, a more frequent conference. I guess you could say like DevOps days, but a virtual one.
And I guess the virtual makes a big difference. I guess there is probably a broader audience
Yeah.
for it. But yeah, I was kind of assuming that Atmos and there would be some presence there for IaCConf because the next one that's
Yeah,
coming.
I got an invitation in my inbox. I gotta probably take that opportunity here and sign up to speak at one of them. I think it'd be a lot of fun to share some of the goodness that we're up to.
Definitely, especially because I know the next one's theme is all about pipeline security, and I think Atmos kind of has that on lock in many ways.
Yeah, especially since yeah, we're focused on pipeline security and GitHub Actions. But yeah, IaCConf 2025.
Oh,
Beautiful.
yeah, that would be worth bringing up. It's also great to see it's back. It's facelift again. They're really doing as far. They're doing as strongly as they can for the open tofu side of things, and also this.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely stepping up, right? So I mean this whole thing is sponsored or funded by Spacelift as well as a ton of the Open Tofu development is funded obviously by Spacelift. So definitely appreciate all that they're doing to make this possible. That you know we'd be in quite of a pickle if we didn't have companies like them sponsoring Open Tofu. Michael, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I had a question or just I guess a poll to bounce off of folks, but I mean I didn't want to jump away from this topic because it's unrelated.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll go ahead then. So I was working with some very old GitHub Actions workflows in the past couple weeks, and I needed to update. Well, I needed to find the actions that were out of date based on the version because when you reference an action in a workflow, you have to give like the repo owner slash the action name at a particular tag, a release tag. And I was working with a lot of workflows that had a lot of out of date actions. So I wrote a little like script, a little tool that could take some different formats and figure out what actions were out of date and find the most recent version using the GitHub API. And I was kind of thinking I'm maybe kind of like this always, run at the end of a workflow type thing of an action that could run in a workflow and check the workflow itself for actions that are out of date and then report at the end of the workflow or before the workflow starts or something. Just like a little note that says, hey,
Yeah.
you're not using the latest version of this action, that type of thing. And I'm just wondering before I like repackage my little command line Python script into a true action that you could add to a workflow. Just wonder if anybody else like had a need for that, or if that's something that might be interesting, or
But why solve it that way and not like with Dependabot, which already supports updating the pinning?
um, I want something that is a little more tactical. Like if I'm working with a body of workflows on my local host, then I need to process them, I need to update them, and then I would push them to a
Do
repo.
it deliberately as part of your work, yeah.
Yeah, or if I had an action that was inside a workflow and it ran every time I ran this workflow, as soon as those the versions that I was using were out of
Yeah.
date, I would get some sort of messaging or notice or something like that that
Have-
said, "Hey, this is kind of out of date. You should update it."
And just throwing this out there, making sure it was a consideration. The other thing you can do is run renovate as a step in a composite action, for example, and then you don't, and renovate supports GitHub Actions, but it also supports everything else under the sun. So then if that's the workflow you like and you'd like to have that workflow as part of your GitHub action, or sorry, as part of your workflow in your GitHub Actions, then you could extend that to be not only for GitHub Actions, but any other dependency you'd want to have checked as part of your pull request.
Got it.
But, yeah. Percival, I see your post there. Have we discussed Hashi Corp in the past? They now show up as Slack Connect as an IBM on Slack Connect as an IBM company. Yeah, I've seen this start showing up now all around. Anywhere I see Hashi Corp, it says as an IBM company on Terraform. Was it? Yeah, HashiCorp.com, of course, does that. And where else was I seeing it? The provider registry. I also think that that's like all of a sudden I noticed that their blog is now active again. So they've been posting regular blog posts when it was pretty much silent for a long time. So I'm guessing IBM is sponsoring or funding some more content development. I'd be curious, how the acquisition is going internally, and how that handoff is going.
For a
I
friend that works over there, it sounds like it's actually going pretty smoothly.
Cool. Yeah, obviously, I want to see that be successful. I think they're also on a real tear with GitHub releases for Terraform. I think they're now they're I'm seeing alpha releases for 1.14 even. So it looks like they're working on 1.13 and 1.14 concurrently.
Mhm.
Yeah, here 1.14.
I've long since unsubscribed to this, but I see these updates popping in through the Cloud Posse Slack, the actual
Yeah,
GitHub news.
I'm really interested in 1.13, and I haven't looked too deep into it. They're exposing some API capabilities, or the way they write it is that they're creating a Stacks plugin implementation in the Terraform core. And is that truly like a plugin? Like anybody can create a plugin for the stacks interface on BSL Terraform? I'm curious. I'm not sure what it actually means. Oh, Michael, I saw your comment there about you'd like to get Atmos tofu in the CLI, rather not be a bother to even type the long command. One of the lesser known features, let's say this is a compensating solution, is we do support aliases, so you can shorten it as much as you'd like. So you can shorten any command or combination of commands into a single keyword in Atmos. So for example, if you alias Atmos to A on your shell, you can run literally A space TF for a very short format. And the same is true for tofu. I think in our instructions for how to set up OpenTofu is you can create an alias if you want for that.
Okay, I know.
There. So you can do an alias like that if you don't want to type out the word Terraform and you want tofu instead. But yeah, it is a I think it's inevitable at some point when the divergence is too great between tofu and Terraform that we'll probably need to create a first class type for tofu, component type to support tofu and exceptions in tofu. All right. Anything else I can help with today or the community? All right. Well, we can wrap up a little bit early if there's nothing else. Rishav, anything else that caught your attention this past week?
Not as of yet. No, no.
No worries. Cool.
Got a bit of a. This is just self-plugging at this point, but the latest issue of Weekly TF, the Anton's Terraform Weekly thing.
Yeah, I saw you made a exactly. You
I
showed
made
up.
the big leagues. I made the big leagues.
Yeah, exactly. In the big leagues now. But it is cool. And I know Igor on our team just started looking into merge queues as well with our GitHub Actions to see what we can do there. So if you see any questions from Igor pop up.
That's brilliant.
All right, everyone. Well, I appreciate your time today as always. Thanks for sharing and looking forward to seeing you all here next week, same time, same place. If Cloud Posse can provide any support for you and your organization, please check out cloudposse.com/support. This is how we are able to operate as an open source company. So please consider it. And other things to check out. If you haven't yet gotten to engage in our community, check out cloudposse.com/Slack, where we have a very active Slack community for you for all to join. If you haven't registered for our weekly office hours, you can do so at cloudposse.com/officehours. Pop in your email, you'll get an invitation from our Google group with our weekly office hours. And lastly, if you want to meet with me at any time, just go to cloudposse.com/meet and book a call, and happy to walk through your situation, see if we can help you out. With that said, have a great rest of your week and talk to you soon.